Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to another Sikh Tech video. Today I'll be doing a bit of an overview of New York Samaagam 2025 and how I did the live stream seva for the last 4 programs of the Samaagam, Friday and Saturday. And specifically today we'll be doing a breakdown of the Ransbai. I did my best to capture a few clips of the setup process, so I'm going to take you step by step on how I set everything up. So the first thing I want to show you is the very first thing I did when I got to the Gurdwara in the evening. The first thing I usually do at any program is do the wiring that involves having no Sangat there yet. So what you're seeing right now are the XLR cables and the power cord. I ran 3 XLR cables to the stage area where the Kirtan would be happening. You'll see a red wire, a yellow wire, and a green wire. I'll explain which one is which in a little bit. But I just run those from the stage to where I'll be sitting with all my computer stuff and everything. And then I also ran a power cable with a few outlets from the nearest power outlet to again where I'll be sitting. After this, the next thing I started doing was running an extension cord. So I wanted to have a camera across from the stage, like a primary camera. This would ultimately end up being my wide shot that took video of the stage and the wider Sangat sitting next to the stage. And there was no power available where I wanted that camera, so I ran a 25-foot cable to that area where I plugged in my camera. Then I ran the HDMI cable from where I'll be sitting across the abia to the side over here where that camera will be, so I can plug in the camera from that section back to my switcher. And I also plugged in the AC power adapter, so there's no batteries involved or anything like that with the camera. It just runs continuously without worrying about that. The next thing I did was run the splitters. So now we're back at the stage area over here. You'll see I have 2 splitters over here, one going to the yellow cable and one going to the green cable. The green cable ended up being my tabla mic, and the yellow cable ended up being my side mic. And the red one, I actually use my own microphone. It's a gooseneck microphone. It's honestly probably not the best thing for vocals, but I find that it does a really good job capturing both the main kirtani, the vajja being used, as well as any immediate sangat that are singing right next to the kirtani. So I like having the gooseneck microphone for that purpose. Just does a really good job capturing the audio there. So there's no need to split that for that purpose. I'll just put my own microphone there in a few minutes. So that's really the stage. From here you can get a good angle of what things look like. The camera is directly across from the stage. It'll be put there in a minute. And now the next thing I do over here is plug in my laptop power charger and the ATEM mini power adapter as well. So you're seeing this little section over here is getting more and more filled with cables. I'm just running all the cables first, and then I'm going to start adding in the actual tech to fill it up. I also ran another HDMI cable and power adapter for the second camera. I ended up moving the camera slightly at the end of the day. I originally thought I would have it on top of the stage over here, but I ended up putting it on the ground right above the XLR cables, and I liked the way that looked a lot better, so I just kept it that way. But it's very similar to the other side, just one power adapter for the camera, and then another HDMI cable going back to the switcher area. Now I'm installing some of the tech. This is the Zoom H6 that I love to use. I do all the XLRs directly into this, and I also have the stereo mics on the top. Now, I really cranked the stereo mics up for this Samaagam because I wanted to make sure I captured as much Sangat audio as possible. That's something that everyone loves to hear in recordings, and I think I did a pretty good job because I was sitting relatively far away but not too far away from the stage. I was able to get a lot of that Sangat audio captured without it being distorted by Kartale or any one person being too close to the microphones. So that worked really well in my opinion. I'm really happy with the way that came out. And then you'll see all the XLR cables plugged in. I also have the H6 plugged in via micro USB directly into the power adapter. So again, I try to avoid batteries wherever possible. I don't use any batteries in my setup at all. Everything is hardwired in. Now the A10 mini is being plugged in. I have that plugged in. You have the power adapter. You have the 2 HDMIs that I ran earlier, and then the USB-C cable that goes to my computer. I also get quite a few questions usually about those orange clips on the side. Those are basically fancy cable ties. They're like cable clamps. I like using them for the bigger cables, like the 25-foot cables I have for the HDMI and my power adapters or my long extension cords. They just clamp down on the cables and hold them in place instead of using Velcro cable ties. It gives you a good idea of what things look like over here with the A10 mini and the H6. Now I have the first camera that I put up. Again, this is across the stage. I have the cable plugged in for the HDMI and the power. The camera is turned on. One thing we ended up doing is I took the Golik from the front and moved it back slightly so no one would be stepping in front of the camera. In the earlier programs, I did not do that. And it's always a big problem because you end up having people coming into the bar hall and they end up being in the camera shot. And not everybody wants to be on camera. And it's kind of awkward and distracting having people walk in, be immediately put on camera like that. So for the Dansby, especially because there's so much more Sangha that usually comes, I moved the Golik back with some help. And that was a big win because we had this giant section at the front with no one walking in front of it. So that worked out really well. And I think it just made a lot of sense for the Dansby. Now we have the mics. We have the XLRs from the stage of the Gurdwara. We ran those down to the bottom over here, and I plugged in my cables to the splitters, and I also brought down my gooseneck mic, and you get a better view of where the camera is here. And these are all the cables and how that looks once you start filling things up. Now, this is a little bit of a story as well. We have really good internet at the Gurdwara. They have a gigabit connection, which is really awesome. But the Wi-Fi is not very good. Obviously, Wi-Fi is just easier. There's no, you could be connected anywhere in the bar hall. You can sit anywhere you want, and you'll be connected. But what I really find is once the bar hall gets full, the connection becomes so unstable. Even if you have a fast connection like this, things just don't end up being very stable or reliable once you have hundreds of people inside. So what I made sure to do this time was run an Ethernet cable to the rack in the closet for a hardwired connection. So I got the full speed, which is great. But running that cable was not easy. Thankfully, there was a Singh who was there who helped me out. Really appreciated that. But we ran this cable 200 feet from where I was sitting over here behind Thabia all the way around the Gurdwara. You'll see it go to the back of the Darbar Hall. It keeps going. We taped it to the wall over here behind all the chairs, up the wall to the second floor of the Darbar Hall to the closet back there. It's a 200-foot cable, and we used almost all of it. Wrapping and unwrapping that thing was a bit of a pain, but it did work. And this piece of tech is a similar story. It's a new thing I rented just for this Samaagam, my first time using it. It's called a Hollyland video transmitter and receiver. It's basically a wireless HDMI transmitter and receiver. What you're looking at here is the receiver. So this is the thing that I put into the A10 mini. And I have the HDMI cable going to that here. The two little circle things on top are the antennas. And you'll see in a little bit the other end of that. I had a third camera set up on the second floor pointing down, which I think looked really cool. And you'll see that shortly. So this is now the program has started. Things are all working. We have the wide shot camera right here, and the cable for the extension going there, the HDMI going back to the switcher over here. You'll see everything turned on and working. We have the H6 working. We have the other camera right there, the medium shot that's a bit closer. And then you can see what it looks like on camera in OBS over here. This is toward the beginning of the Dansby. And I think I do a camera switch over here. So that's the close-up. This is the wider shot. And I do have the overhead shot as well in the next clip over here. And you'll see how that looks. I think it looks pretty nice. It's a very cool angle in my opinion. It's nice having flexibility with camera angles. I like having one of a medium shot / close-up shot like that is nice for not having distractions. People aren't always a fan of those somewhat closer angles. I'm not the biggest fan of like super close-ups of like one person, but I think it's important for just having that one medium shot where you have just the people doing kirtan in the shot. Just because there's something happening behind them or around the area, you don't get that on camera then. So having that as an option is really helpful. And then having that second angle as a wide shot is really nice, so you see everybody. And again, if something comes up, someone gets up or causes distraction, you can switch easily to the close-up shot after that. And then this wider shot from the back over here is the new thing I tried for this Samaagam, and having that wireless transmitter receiver really helped. No running a long cable for HDMI. This was really nice just for more of a feel for the Sangat at home. You can see what the Gurdwara looks like. You can see what the entire hall actually looks like. It just feels like you're actually there. And I find that to be a very nice thing to have for the broadcast. This is the third angle from the second floor now. Now, it's not the perfect setup. You still have to run this power cable and plug in the camera itself. You have to plug in the transmitter as well. That requires power. There is a USB-C connector on the transmitter. I didn't end up using that. I just plugged it in directly to the power adapter. So you still have to run a power cable for all of this, but it's much easier than running a very, very long HDMI cable. So it's way more flexible, and it kind of like points directly at the receiver, which is at the other end. I was sitting behind the stage, or sorry, behind the tabia over there, so you can't really see my gear, which is kind of nice. It's kind of hidden away, but that is where it's pointing, and then it's plugged into the ATM Mini, where I'm sitting back there. And I think it works pretty well. I think I'll probably get it again. You can see the other angle of this now. That's the camera from where I was sitting, so it's pretty far away. I think the range on this is a couple hundred feet. But I had some issues at the beginning with connecting the two transmitter receiver together, so it was a bit finicky, but once I got it working, it was pretty good. And I believe that is it. So I think this was a pretty solid setup for New York Samaagam. I tried some new things. I kept most of my setup the same. It was pretty straightforward. I don't think I had any major issues. Everything worked pretty well. I had backups of most of my gear. So if something did break, I could easily swap it out. But if you have any questions about the setup, leave a comment down below. I wanted to take a quick minute to document all this, and hopefully it helps somebody else who might be doing something similar. Thank you so much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.